Welcome to Issues That Matter. I'm Cynthia Poole, and my guest today is my friend Robert Meeropol, and we're going to talk about the political climate of today. Robert, there is a lot to talk about. Why don't you get started? What's your thoughts?
Well, one of the things that has really been bothering me recently is we hear all this praise for the system because Donald Trump is finally being held to account, because he's been indicted. And that just strikes me. The only way I can describe it is this kind of an emperor's new clothes situation, that the idea that we have someone who for their entire life has engaged in major business, financial, tax, and various kinds of fraudulent and illegal behavior. And then this person and the system never holds him to account. And this person then becomes president and does all these obviously illegal things right in front of everybody.
Right.
And then the system protects him because he's president. And then when he ends up leaving the presidency, already more than 2 years have gone by. And finally, somebody does something that might end up holding him to some sort of account. And they say the system is working. No, it's proof that the system is not working.
Right.
It's not working at all. In fact, our entire judicial system from top to bottom is in total shambles, and it's not legitimate anymore. I mean, if you look at the Supreme Court, you've got perjurers, fraudsters sitting in judgment as Supreme Court justices.
Right.
The Chief Justice is doing nothing about it. Zero
Right.
about it. And in fact, the Chief Justice comes out and makes a statement that this is a couple of years old now. This is from Trump's time, where he says there are no Republican judges, there are no Democratic judges, there are just Article 3 judges, as if judges in the federal court system are above politics. And we all know that's not, we all know that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
Every one of us knows it's not true. And the Chief Justice knows it's not true. And so when you say something that is not true, and it's not true, there's a word for that. It's called a lie.
Right.
So we have the Chief Justice of the United States telling an obvious lie. You've got Supreme Court justices who are engaged in illegal activity, and no one's doing anything about it. And people are saying the system is working. I mean, really? That's why I say the emperor has no clothes.
Mm-hmm.
The only people who are saying the system is working are those who feel the system has to work because there's no alternative. And of course, they're 100% wrong.
What's the alternative?
Well, I mean, I think the alternative is actually at this point, and I put a powerful share of the alternative on the shoulders of the profession, the legal profession, of which I am a retired member of.
Right.
And that is, I'm waiting for someone to get up in front of the Supreme Court and say, you're illegitimate. You should not be sitting in judgment in this case because you are part of a thoroughly political process. And if we want to depoliticize the judiciary, we have to wipe the slate clean of what's been going on and come up with an entirely new procedure to figure out a system where you do not have political judges, because if you have political judges, then you have political results.
Uh-huh.
And so, that's, and I think the first step in changing the system, you say, what's the alternative? Well, it's not like I've given you a blueprint for a different set of court systems, but I think the first step towards doing that is recognizing that it needs to be changed, that it is dysfunctional. And I think we're not at that stage yet, unfortunately, to a large degree, because there's no one in the legal profession. We're all supposed to represent our clients, and lawyers get up in front of the Supreme Court and they feel that if they don't play the game, they don't act the way they're supposed to act and argue the way they're supposed to argue, it will hurt their clients. But that's not necessarily the case in a political court system, because given the politics of the situation, what the result is going to be. So someone going up there representing a client who is trying to push progressive ideas is going to lose, and they know they're going to lose. So why not attack the legitimacy of the system in order to undermine it, so that one day we might have a system they could win under, instead of just being a slave to the system, which is what I think we have. So that's the what we have in our judiciary now is an embarrassment. We have, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was supposedly involved in one of the 9/11 or one of the major terrorist attack, who was
Right.
in Guantanamo, was waterboarded 183 times.
God.
And the court system did absolutely nothing about it at all. Just this morning, I read an article about an Algerian who was released to Algeria out of Guantanamo Bay. He'd been held for 21 years there without trial, without any even specific charges, without anything. And what have our courts done about it? Absolutely nothing. And we have, a federal appeals court judge on the Ninth Circuit who wrote a memo talking about the Geneva Conventions being quaint, and against human rights abuses being quaint, and endorsing enhanced interrogation techniques, otherwise known as torture. And there's not one single federal judge in the entire country who raises an objection to this. They're all there. They're all running around naked, and everybody's saying all they see are their judicial robes. And it is appalling.
Well, I think what's going on in the executive branch is appalling. Let's take a little step back and talk about the midterms.
Okay.
They spoke, the pundits thought that it was going to be a red wave, but it wasn't. And it came down to New York, and with the reapportionment in New York. And then we got this crazy guy from Long Island who lied his way through, winning, and and then we got McCarthy, who's not really, according to what I read, is not really the best speaker we've ever had. So there's a slight edge for the Republicans in Congress. Okay, now we're looking towards 2024. And, I put the news on, and, if you put on MSNBC, it's Biden 24/7. Okay, you don't hear much about other candidates who might decide to run or have decided to run. They're irrelevant. All they want to talk about is a Trump Biden rematch. And I think it's totally ridiculous. Issues are not being discussed. And we are in bad shape in this country. And we're in bad shape throughout the world. I think people deserve to talk about issues that, but it's not happening. Um, as you said, we're the same age. But growing up, looking at all of the different presidential campaigns, did you ever see anything this bad before? What do you think?
Well, presidential campaigns, it's hard to, I mean, in general, when I try to think about my lifetime, which is, I was born in 1947, and somebody would ask me who was the best president we had in our lifetime, it's really hard to come up with anybody who's been much good. I mean, when you think about it, it's, perhaps it is worse, but it's been so bad so consistently. I mean, it is a terrible situation. I agree with you 100%. We are locked into to what we've got. And you talk about George Santos in
Right.
Nassau County, and again, the system's working. This guy gets elected and he's a total phony and he's still there.
Yep,
I mean,
he's still there.
how come he's still there? I mean, it's unbelievable. But it is the reality that we're faced with. And I think that, much is, it might be nice to have, I mean, I would love to have better alternatives than we have. But the reality is that the way the system is set up right now, it is designed, I mean, the inertia of the status quo is very powerful. So what you have is the status quo versus the extreme right. That's our political terrain. Trying to get anything to the left it seems like almost impossible. And we're a very wealthy, powerful country that we have benefited from sucking the lifeblood out of the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the result is we have a significant portion of the population that is extremely complacent. And when you put that together with a sort of settler colonialist ideology of aggression and violence, you have a battle going on between the center and the right. And those of us who are on the left look at this and say, this is totally unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, the forces that are engaged are so powerful. I don't see them between now and 2024. I don't see any major change. And it's hard not to be pessimistic because of that. So that's, when you talk about, when you asked me about, has it ever been worse, in a presidential election, what I immediately flashed on was not a presidential election, but a gubernatorial election here in Massachusetts that took place a whole bunch of years ago, between I think it was between John Silber, who was the Democrat, who was a right-wing president of Boston University, and William Weld, who has since been, who's run third-party libertarian candidate since, who was the Republican. And I remember people joking that what we're talking about here was the instead of the lesser of two evils, we were talking about the evil of two lessers. That's what we have. We have, for all of Biden's environmental claims, the opening up of the Arctic to drilling and the various other things that he's doing show that he doesn't understand that the environment actually has to take priority over the economy, that we cannot afford to keep, from an environmental standpoint, we court disaster. We're bringing about disaster by continuing to pump fuel out of the ground, and we've got to stop doing it. And he claims to be this big environmental leader, and then he goes ahead and he shoots the environmental movement in the back. So, this is also unacceptable, and that's where we find ourselves.
Why do you think that the news media or the media is not covering voices who are challenging the status quo?
Well, the news media, we have the major networks are owned by massive corporations who have a tremendous stake in the economy, and they make their money via advertising. And so the result is that while we don't get the same kind of obvious lies that you get on Fox, you get a sanitized version of the news that essentially, if they have dissenting voices, they're marginalized. In other words, you'll have 15 hours of programming in support of the status quo, and then you'll have someone get on for 15 minutes and talk like me, and that supposedly legitimizes the fact that they're covering everything, but it doesn't, because it's really, it doesn't work that way. As I used to say, when General Motors wants to sell a new line of automobiles, they don't take out one commercial for 15 minutes. They end up advertising constantly all over the place, and that sinks in. So what sinks in is this essential support of the status quo. And that's why you get stories about how the system is holding people to account, and that proves that it works. Because from their point of view, if people start saying the system is not working, then they're in trouble, because they're the ones who are benefiting the most from the system.
You just said something interesting. You mentioned Fox News, and you said that.
Well, I didn't mention Fox News. I mentioned Fox. I try to take the word out, the word news out, because they're not news.
Okay. So you mentioned that they lie. Can you document one lie that you know?
Well, it's very easy. I mean, we have the whole 2020 election, where you have Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and Maria, whatever her name is, and all these, and they're all emailing each other saying, this is a bunch of baloney. This is they use some expletives, but they basically are saying this is garbage. This is not true. And then they get on the media and they interview people who are promoting these lies as if they are true. So that's the real change that's happened with Fox. Is we now have, in their own words, proof that they don't broadcast, they make no effort to broadcast the truth. Their effort is to broadcast what they want, what they think their viewers want to hear, so they can maintain their ratings. So we now can prove that they're a bunch of liars, so they're not news anymore.
Okay, let me ask you this question, and you're not going to like me when I ask this.
Mm.
You think that MSNBC is truthful?
Well, I think that MSNBC does a better job of giving you the range, a range of views out there. Do I think it's always truthful? No, I don't think so. I think that it, you know, it, there's an awful lot of Biden promotion and an awful lot of looking the other way. There's nobody, the war in Ukraine is a good example. Okay. There
Okay,
we have MSNBC rah 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 for the war in Ukraine. Well,
correct.
but the problem with the war in Ukraine right now is that it's a stalemate. The people who are benefiting from this stalemate are the arms dealers because they keep making more and more and
Right,
more money. And
correct.
so if and there seems to be, so what's the solution? Well, the solution is to end the fighting. But how are you going to end the fighting? Well, you have to come up with a plan that acknowledges the sovereignty of Ukraine and the basic, the wrongness of Russia's behavior in invading Ukraine, but at the same time, actually looks to what the people in the area that was invaded want. And so for instance, take a look at Crimea right now.
Okay.
Do we know what the people of Crimea want? Do they want to be part of the Russian Federation or do they want to be part of Ukraine? In
Mhm.
my belief, people are sovereign. It's for the people to decide, not for the government. And so it seems to me there needs to be a neutral plebiscite engineered by a neutral party that would demilitarize the Crimean Peninsula, so such a plebiscite could take place in a fair
Mhm.
manner. And if the majority want to join the Russian Federation, they should join the Russian Federation. And if the majority want to join Ukraine, they should join Ukraine. But the problem with that is neither side will agree to that at this,
Right.
there's no way Russia is going to withdraw its troops and allow a plebiscite. And there's no way Ukraine is going to say, well, if the people of Crimea want to join the Russian Federation, they can join the Russian Federation. So, but you have to start proposing things like that. And what we got instead is we don't hear anything like that from MSNBC. What we hear is how can we get more arms to the Ukrainians
Right.
more quickly? And that's not I don't know whether that's a lie, but it is by not taking a step back and saying, who's really benefiting from this
Mhm.
and who's really losing out here? It distorts the situation, takes it out of context, and ultimately it perpetuates warfare, which is, another thing that I want to say about this is that is not talked about, and I know that I tend to harp on environmental issues. Nobody's talking about what an environmental disaster war is.
Right.
And it is a complete environmental disaster. And yet it goes on and on and on.
Mhm.
And MSNBC, which supposedly talks about the Green New Deal and liking green things, doesn't seem to see the contradiction in what they're promoting.
Maybe they see it, but their benefactors don't want them to say anything.
Well, it's certainly possible. It's certainly
Right.
possible that that's where it's coming from. But the end result is the audience, sees rah rah war in Ukraine and doesn't
Right.
see the fact that it's really the continuing process is not really doing anybody any good.
Right. So uh, in November, there'll be local elections, and then it's going right into the presidential elections. if you if you w- if you were to make a guess as of today, if the election was held tomorrow, you think the Democrats would regain the House?
Yes,
You do.
yes. And I think they would actually gain in the Senate a little bit, which is amazing because they have a very uphill, they have a hard, they have to defend more of their own seats this time around, I think. But I actually think that if the election were held today, I think there's a good chance the Democrats would control all three branches of government,
So you think that
not the court, but I
the
mean the House and Senate.
the Democrats are going to keep control of the White House?
I think so. I think so because I don't think Trump can win.
Okay.
And
And
I
you
don't know who else, I don't know who else is there. I mean, I think that there's, you know, that if DeSantis, for instance, were to somehow pull himself out of the morass he's in, and somehow secure the nomination, Trump would bash him, the Trumpies would stay home, and he'd lose even more than Trump would. And so I think that, I think that if it turned, and I think that on the Democratic side, I just don't, the entire party establishment is lining up against, in favor of Biden.
right.
And there's nobody there who's gonna, I think that if there are any candidates who seek to oppose him,
Mhm.
they're gonna get single digit votes.
So you think Robert Kennedy is not going to give Biden a run for his money?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I would be shocked if he would get more than 10% of the vote in the Democratic primary.
Why do you think that's so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because I think that he's not considered a significant political figure. And
Wait right there. Who who says he's not a significant political figure?
in my opinion, the public in general does not consider him a political figure.
Because of the vaccine thing.
Well, I think so, yeah.
Okay. So overall, you think the vaccine thing is the determining factor in whether Robert Kennedy succeeds or not?
No, I don't think it's determining, because I think that the reality is he doesn't have a political party behind him. He has a following of mostly anti-vaxxers, and they're not a major political force, particularly within the Democratic Party, that he might actually have more support in the Republican Party. So I just, I don't think, we'll see. I mean, one of the things about this that's useful in talking about this, as things go on, we'll see which one of us is correct about this.
Right. And do you see anybody challenging either DeSantis or Trump?
Well, there may be some person out there waiting in the wings. That's the other thing we should keep in mind. It is April of 2023. We're talking about 18 months, and things can happen in 18 months.
Correct.
That someone can come out of the woodwork who we've never seen or heard of, who can surprise us. And so I don't see that on the horizon right now on either side. But I would also say, just because I don't see it doesn't mean it's impossible. It's quite possible that something will come along. But if you look at the candidate, I get a feeling when I look at people like Nikki Haley and various other people running, that they may be running for vice president. That there's, that they're putting themselves out there and getting name recognition and staking out positions, particularly if they're not particularly attacking Trump, And they're thinking, well, he's got to choose somebody as his vice presidential candidate. Maybe it'll be me. The idea that somebody would want to be Trump's vice president is like, I can't imagine why anybody would want to do that, but evidently people do.
Right. So I think the next year and a half is going to be very interesting. And the fact that both men are up there in age, I don't know if it frightens me, disgusts me, but there's so much talent, younger talent, smart people, articulate people. Where are they?
Well, you want to talk about age. Look at Dianne Feinstein. You have
Oh
someone
my God.
who's 89 years old, who
Right.
can't, who's losing her short-term memory, who can't function in the Senate, and she's still there.
Yep. And
She's
she's
still
not
there.
going anywhere. Right.
Yeah, well, it is a problem, and I think the reality is I want to agree with you 100% that if we could get a lot of more younger people
Yep.
in the situation, it would be an improvement at this point, because
Right.
the younger generation has a greater understanding of the disasters in front of us and the fact that they're going to have to deal with them.
Right.
Our
Exactly.
generation is in some ways one of the at least the generation that lived here in this country is one of the luckiest generations, because we have we were born after the Depression, after the war. We've lived through prosperity, and here we are. The environmental damage that our generation has inflicted upon the planet, we're not going to live to see the worst aspects of it. So, it's hard not to feel guilty sometimes.
So we have a year and a half to talk about this, Robert, and I'm sure there'll be many occasions that
Yes.
we do. So you've been listening to Robert Meeropol. I'm Cynthia Pooler. This is Issues That Matter. If you like this show, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And Robert, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm glad I'm able to talk to you.
Congratulations, and I look forward to talking again.
Thank you. You have a wonderful day.